My favorite industry is the brewing industry. Now, if it wouldn't have been, I wouldn't have spent there 34 years. There are certain reasons for it as well, which I discovered whilst working there. One is that it brings you very close to the customer, and they're very different customers, from high up in society to the lowest of your little shops and little pubs and things like that. It's an industry which is very competitive, but not ferocious. They get on together as competitors quite well. And one of the things that made it interesting is that alcohol has brought to the society a lot of pleasure, but also a lot of trouble. So you always have to consider, when you're trying to, let's say, maximize your sales and work like that, whether you are stimulating the use of alcohol or the abuse of alcohol. So let's say right from the beginning, you are more or less confronted what is now very modernly called corporate social responsibility. We didn't know that word at the time, but we felt it. CSR in the business school here, it's getting a lot of attention. That being the case, if it's part of education, the new managers managing companies and who have been educated here, no doubt will bring it in their way of management. So that way it comes. But apart from that, even, let's say, top down, you have to solve certain problems which are immediately connected to the way you work. Let's say if you take the pollution thing, if you want to get rid of pollution, concessions have to be made by industry. And not only because they are laid from the top, but also because they have to find new ways. This thing stimulates not only a different behavior, but it even stimulates innovation in order to solve the problems. Let's say little things can sometimes be very important. I mean, you're using every day probably these little notes you can stick on the wall. They were invented by an employee of a company, almost by accident, but to get them as a market product, it needs passion and endurance, because who's going to buy otherwise paper that sticks? I think you shouldn't start on anything unless you're really passionate about it. I mean, a would-be entrepreneur, if he has an idea, if he isn't really passionate about it, he will not have the endurance to go through the first stage, which is just difficulties, nothing else. Building, 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 without immediate results. Disappointment after disappointment. And only the ones who have chosen the right area and have the endurance to push through are the ones who will be successful. Because we are always admiring the ones we know, but we don't recognize how many dead bodies are along the road of the people who have also tried and have missed something.